Most CEOs believe their pipeline is healthy because the CRM said so. But the deals that are stalling, drifting, and quietly being lost tells a very different story. Today, we're exposing the dangerous assumptions sales leaders make about what their teams are actually doing inside their opportunities. Why processes beat skills every time when it comes to predictability of revenue, and what the highest performance commercial organizations are doing to win more deals in a tougher market. I am Janice B Gordon, the customer growth expert, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast, ranked among the top sales podcasts globally for CEOs, revenue leaders, and growth-focused organizations. My next guest has spent 3 decades at the forefront of global sales performance and improvement. Co-founder of Ignite Selling in 2010 and is co-author of Ignite Your Sales Strategy. He has helped world-class organizations including Boston Scientific, Siemens, and Mastercard accelerate revenue through smarter processes, strategic selling, and sales coaching. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Steve Gielda.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for allowing me to be here with you today. I really do appreciate it, Janice.
Well, it's lovely to hear from you from Texas, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this conversation. So let me start with Steve. You've spent over 25 years in the trenches with sales teams globally, from pharma, finance, manufacturing. Now, I know you've seen a lot of changes in the economy, haven't we all?
Yeah, particularly recently.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's just like your head spinning with the amount of changes. So right now, buyers are under pressure. We've often seen salespeople under pressure, but I think buyers are also under cost pressures as well. So, what does a salesperson actually do to win in this market now against, the cheaper alternatives, because we're seeing a flood of those coming in. So I think they've got this extra dynamic that they're having to deal with. So what would you say?
I think the thing we have to first recognize is that, buyers have metrics to which they have to meet. Buyers are still responsible for driving a specific outcome for their company. And sometimes when that metric is cost savings, they're quickly to turn to lower cost alternatives out there. And we have to kind of recognize that if that's the way the customer is going to go, what do we do about that? That doesn't mean that we have to drop our price to match the lowest cost competitor, but it does have to take us back to the very first thing that I mentioned, and that is they are held to a series of metrics. I often ask salespeople, what are the top 2 or 3 metrics your buyer is being held accountable to or is trying to improve in the next 12 months? And they often don't know. And if you are facing a customer that is struggling with the difficult economy themselves, and they're being told they have to cut cost, cutting cost doesn't always mean reducing your price to help meet that customer. Sometimes you can help cut cost for a customer by maybe shifting how they're buying into maybe a just-in-time inventory, so they don't have to worry about holding inventory as long. You're reducing their cost of inventory because you're allowing them to purchase right at the same time. But you wouldn't know to have to offer that as a potential solution unless you really understood what the metrics are that they're trying to achieve. And so the short answer, Janice, is understand what are the metrics your customers being held accountable to improving in the next 12 months, and talk about how your solutions can help that client meet those metrics. Don't worry about the competitor. Demonstrate how your solutions helps that client meet their metrics.
I think you're absolutely right, because as soon as a salesperson knows that that's the line that buyers want to go, in actual fact, that's more often than not the way buyers are going to go, because part of their metrics is to get the best value, isn't
Sure.
it? And value is related to cost, and they're not always the experts in the field, are they? When you
Correct.
have a buying group. So I think you're absolutely right. You've really got to understand what is their expertise, what do they really know, what information can you support them on in order to create that value for whoever they might be buying whatever product or service for. I and also that buyer may have only been in the job for a year.
Yeah.
The sales
Well, I think
cycle could be much longer than that. It's all of that information that's probably got nothing to do with your product that is really important to know about the environment that you're selling into, I think.
Well, I think a couple of things you said there are true. First of all, buyers are buying outcomes. They're not buying products. They're buying outcomes. And to your point, there are often several different buyers involved in a decision-making process. When sellers begin to genericize the value that they bring, that the value is the same for the CFO as it is for the CTO. Well, that's not true. That CFO and that chief technology officer and the chief revenue officer and the chief marketing officer all have different metrics. And if they're involved in that buying process, remember, they're still buying outcomes. But what's the outcomes of the CFO that they're expecting versus the chief technology officer? And if we just start to genericize things, we find out that our value proposition isn't really resonating with all of the influencers that are involved in the decision-making process. So yes, it's really important for us to understand what are the outcomes they're looking for as a result of making a change from what they're currently doing today.
Okay, Steve, let's delve into that, because that's a really great point. And if I was the salesperson, you think, well, I've got typically 6 to 10 people in the decision-making unit.
Yeah.
They've all got different outcomes they want to achieve for this one product or service. I'm not going to be doing 6 different pitches. How do I make sure that, and many of those people are not in the room I'm in, and I don't even know what room that they're in.
Yeah.
So a lot of that selling has to be done internally when I'm not in the room. How on earth, this salesperson, how on earth am I going to be able to hit all of those outcomes when I'm actually not speaking directly to the person, and I don't know who might be in the room that I don't know about? How do I do that?
Selling is hard, isn't it? It is. And it's becoming more and more complex because of everything you just said, Janice. I think that it's very true that we know that there are multiple stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. We often don't know who they are or how to get access to them. But it's important for us to then begin to explore, how is this decision going to be made? We need to understand how the decision process is going to be made. Is it going to be, yes, you might have 6 to 12 people involved in the decision, but frankly, it's going to come down to these 7, or maybe 12 years, it's come down to 5 out of the 12 people that really have the most level of influence. But it's important to kind of at least identify who are those top 3, 4, 5 people that you do have to gain access to. And if you can't get access to them, you have to then begin to explore who is of these key stakeholders are supporting your ideas and who's deadly against your ideas. Because if I know who my advocates are, I could leverage those advocates to say, hey, how do I get access over to Susan over here? I've been working with you for a while, but I've never met Susan. Can you help me? And that particular advocate might be able to get you access to this individual to whom you only know her by name, but they can actually help you get access to them. Or at a bare minimum, they might, if you ask the right questions, they might be able to tell you what are the drivers of the outcome that she's looking for as a result of this decision. But I tell you, selling in today's market is very complex. And if we merely don't acknowledge that, and we're only going to speak to the people that are only willing to speak with us, and only willing to talk about the things that they want to talk about, we will find ourselves losing more sales than we win.
I mean, I would absolutely agree with that. I remember on another podcast having a discussion, and we were talking about the process of the complex process. 80% of it is deal management.
Yeah.
And only 20% of it is the sale nowadays. And
Yeah.
it's interesting how that's balanced has really tipped so much into the negotiation and understanding who are your alliances, and that you've got to be able to communicate really well and be extremely strategic in your processes before you even get to the point where you're going to be selling anything.
I think what you're hitting it right on the head. If you stop and just ask any top sales organization today, what does a sales representative have to do strategically to move an opportunity from the stage 1 to stage 2? What you're likely to get is 5 different answers if you ask 5 different salespeople. There isn't a consistent process for them to follow. But if in fact you were to build out what we call a strategic milestone, which is a critical action, if not taken, puts the opportunity at risk. It's those strategic things, Janice, that you're talking about. If we make sure that we build that into the well-defined process, we will have our sales team saying, in the early part of the process, I need to figure out who all the stakeholders are. I need to validate who those stakeholders are. I need to understand what their decision criteria is in terms of comparing us to other competitors. I need to understand what their business metrics are, what outcomes they're looking for. And that is just a consistent part of our process, because you're right. It's about deal management, opportunity management. Then you have to go sell. But if you don't understand that one of the first things I have to go do is understand who those stakeholders are, what outcomes are they looking for, what's the criteria that they're using to make this decision, I'm doing random acts of selling. I'm walking in there and we're just trying to sell, but we didn't stop and think, am I selling to the right person? Do I understand what we're selling to support? Do I know the outcomes that they're looking for? And so I think you're hitting it right on the head. It's about deal management.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to your point, I think it was Forrester's that did some research that showed that outcomes focused sellers are 2 times more likely to win competitive deals than those that rely on features and price justification. So I'd like to talk a bit about your book, because I know you've mentioned some terms that are particularly in your book. So the book talks about understanding buying factors for each unique sale, from the buyer's perspective. So what should all organizations be doing right now to make it easier to engage and actively make a decision? And you've talked about some of the terminology that you've developed in your book.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the book, and we'll talk a little bit more about the book and how people can get a copy of the book here towards the end of our time together today. But I think that to answer your question specifically, what is it that organizations can do to make it easier for their sellers to have success? Is number one is examine your pipeline. Look at what you have in Salesforce.com, Zoho, Microsoft Dynamics, whatever CRM system you're using. And ask yourself when you're looking at it, does a sales representative know exactly what they need to be doing in each stage, what the verifiable outcomes that they should be accomplishing before they move the opportunity to the next step? We call these things, you heard me use the term strategic milestones just a moment ago. And to determine whether or not do you have a well-defined, repeatable process, go ask 5 salespeople one question. What are you doing to move an opportunity? What do you think has to be completed done to move an opportunity from stage 2 to stage 3? If you get 5 different answers from 5 different salespeople, you got a problem. The first thing you need to do is go back and let's redefine, how are you looking at your pipeline process? Let's make sure that everybody's on the same page. And that's not hard to do. That's about getting some smart people that have success in your company in a room, identifying what those critical actions are in the early, middle, and late stages, and define them in a way that there is no ambiguity. It says you need to identify the critical criteria the customer is using to compare you against the competition. Guess what you have to do? I've got to go find out what the criteria is this customer is using to compare me against the competition. It's not ambiguous. Either you know it or you don't. And then maybe another milestone is that you need to understand how that criteria differs between the top 3 key influencers. It's not ambiguous. Do you know how the criteria that they're using to make this decision is different between the top 3 key influencers? When you have a sales process that is that clearly defined, you're putting your sales representatives on a path for predictable success. Most importantly, as a senior leader in sales, you're getting better sales forecasting. Because now I know what's in stage 2 truly should be in stage 2. So
it seems to me, Steve, so when we talk about the stages, it's often very internally focused. Yeah. But when we talk about milestones, you're actually going out of the process to really understand what are the benchmarks, whatever the criteria you might be using, where are we against competitors and influencers and so forth? What does it mean to the customer? And I think that's where the key difference is.
Yeah, I think if you look at just use Salesforce.com as an example, any CRM system comes with titles and headings across the top of the page, what they define as stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it might be. But yes, we are actually, when we do this, we work with our clients to say, let's define what are the best in your industry doing in the early, middle, and late stages. And if it is about identifying those key stakeholders, then we actually would train them that it's not just about identifying who those stakeholders are, but it's about leveraging those identifying who loves you, who doesn't, who's important and who's not, and then improving that picture. We have a tool called the influencer snapshot that's in the book. That influencer snapshot, anybody can fill out. If you've been working the account for 30 days, you would have some assumption around who has high influence, who has low influence of the top 5 key stakeholders. How would you rank those people? And then you'd probably have some kind of assumption around who loves me, supports my ideas, and who doesn't. The question is first of all, is your assumption correct? If you had it validated by somebody inside the organization, yeah, Janice has higher influence than Mark. Okay, Janice supports my thinking, Mark does not. You've had that validated. Now the question is can Janice help me win over Mark? But you're thinking strategically about those things. But it requires us, Janice, to make sure that we have clearly defined processes, not just headers in our pipeline, but clear actions that our sales representatives need to be taking.
Yeah, I love that. I worked with key account management at Cranfield School of Management, and very much that's a tool that I use in terms of identifying your influencers, who's got the most influence in the business on this particular deal, and what's your relationship to them. Is if it's really poor and they're the highest influencers, you need to do something about that, because they don't know who you are and they're influencing the decision. And it's actually, for many sales teams, these are big deals. They have no understanding of that, and that is key. It kind of blows everything apart, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
I mean, assumptions are deadly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've done when we did the research for our book is we do a lot of win-loss analysis. And when we were doing the research for the book, we would do that for no charge for our clients in order to collect the data. Why did salespeople win and why did salespeople lose? And in both situations, there were assumptions being made. When sales reps won, they would tell us why they won. We'd go back, talk to their customers, say, why did you choose to partner with this particular company? And the answers that they gave us didn't align with what the account manager said. But it was even true when they lost. When they lost, sales representative, for example, would say, oh, we lost because the competitor had a lower price. When we went back and talked to the customer, we said, hey, why did you choose to do business with this other company? It had nothing to do with price. It had everything to do with some other criteria that the sales representative didn't know anything about. So I do think that assumptions are very deadly. And one of the things we found during this win-loss analysis is the more experienced the salesperson is, the more assumptions that they make.
Really? Wow.
Because they've been, yeah, think about it, right?
Because they
They've
think
been
they
there,
know.
done that.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been working this account for the last 7 years. You know, you're asking me who's involved in the decision-making process? Oh my gosh, well, I've been working this account for 7 years. It's so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so. So who did you validate that with? Because has there been any acquisitions in the last 7 years? Has there been any changes in personnel at all? Did somebody else's voice matter that you don't know yet? Or are you just assuming because these were the people that were involved last year when they signed the contract, that these are the same people this year? You never validated it. And that's just because experience. So yeah, we have found that the more experienced the salesperson is, the more assumptions that they make.
So is it the more experience they have with that account, with that in that industry, in that, you know, vertical?
Great distinction, Janice. We would say yes. And how many times have we seen it where you have a sales representative who's been in a territory for 7 to 10 years? They choose to leave because of whatever reasons. You bring in a new fresh face that doesn't know anybody, know anything. All of a sudden, revenues skyrocket in that new territory. Why? The economy changed? The new products changed? No, we changed the sales representative who didn't know as much, and they went in and started digging in. They started finding out, oh my gosh, there's so much more opportunity here. But the sales rep who was in that territory for the last 6 years, you know, started petering out towards the last 2 years of their career because they were making too many assumptions.
And that's interesting because how many sales leaders move their field reps around? There's going to be resistance from the rep and there's resistance from the leader as well. But it's really interesting, that stat that you've just mentioned. I mean, if they did, they might open up whole new opportunities.
Happens all the time.
Then you have the other example is the rep that is in a top salesperson for years and years and years, and they're not having to do very much work for it. It's just their customer happens to be in a growing market. So there's a lot that actually happens that the field sales really do mask.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. I think that we all need somebody to challenge our assumptions. And I think what good sales leaders do is they ask questions that challenge the critical thinking of their salespeople. And even their most experienced salespeople. And that sometimes that's a little uncomfortable to do, but if you do it right, that experienced salesperson will really appreciate the fact that you're asking them questions that they haven't given thought to. You know, one of the things we talk about in the book, towards the end of the book in the last chapter, is this whole notion around the questions that managers ask. And we've kind of put questions into 3 different buckets that managers ask: discover questions, dissect questions, and develop questions. And those discover questions are just about the facts. What's going on inside the account? Who are they currently working with today? When's their contract currently up? Who are you talking to? Blah, blah, blah. Those questions are important to a manager, but, you know, it doesn't add much value to the sales rep. What we want is sales rep managers asking sales reps questions that really take it to the next step. And you'll know that you're doing it when there's a pause in that sales rep's response. So instead of just asking the discover question, so who's involved in the decision-making process, maybe a better question to still find out your answer is, which of the key stakeholders that are involved in the decision-making process are better aligned to our customer's solution than ours? If they don't know the answer to that's a problem. They need to go find out. But that's a question that makes them think, that challenges the critical thinking. But I think that's how you begin to uncover, Janice, those challenges around how do you help a sales representative who's been in a territory for 12 years or whatever the case might be, find new opportunities. And that's to challenge their critical thinking. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Talking about challenging critical thinking. So there are many CEOs that suspect the pipeline is more friction than forecast. And so what's one thing that you would look at, or from a CEO's point of view, who probably doesn't get involved that much, who trusts the sales leader, what's the thing that they can do Monday morning to really identify what's going on in their revenue?
The joy of CRM systems today is that they produce, amazing reports. You can pull any kind of data from it. And now there's AI components to it that you can customize any report that you want. And I think a chief sales officer or even a CEO, depending upon the size of the company, that they can start to look at first thing Monday morning is where are the opportunities stalling? Where are they getting stuck? And then why? And what we typically find out is opportunities typically stall somewhere in the middle to later stages. Sales representatives think, hey, I've got momentum, they got interest, they go do the demonstration, those kind of things. All of a sudden, things start to slow down. You can't get them to fully commit, to send the contract, get the PO done, those kinds of things. Why is that? And so one of the first things that we would recommend doing is pulling that pipeline report and finding out where are they stalling. You pick the date. Say, I want to know, which opportunities are stuck in the pipeline for more than 60 days. Great. What stage are they stalling in? Where do you see that 60-day stall? Stage 2, stage 3, stage 4? And then you have to ask yourself why. Why are these opportunities stalling? And in many cases, our research says that those opportunities are stalling because there was something skipped in the early stages that just didn't get done. They never created that urgency, maybe. Maybe they never found out what are the outcomes this customer is really trying to achieve as a result of this decision. When in fact, sales leaders or even business owners can find out where opportunities are stalling and then begin to dig in why, they can really begin to add value to their own organization, get those things unstuck, and start finding ways to accelerate revenue in your organization without bringing new business in. Let's just continue doing what we're doing about new business in, but let's get this stuff through our pipeline faster.
Yeah. So what was the one surprising aspect of the research that you did for Ignite Your Sales Strategy, the book?
I think there are a couple of them, but I think the most probably impactful kind of aha that we found when we were doing the research there was the fact that when salespeople begin to, going back to what you said, start to strategically analyze the opportunity, stop just running and making random sales calls, but stop for a moment, start analyzing the opportunity through a strategic lens. That opportunity is moved through that sales pipeline at 36% faster with a revenue increase of 17%. Now we're like, So we kind of expected the faster acceleration because they're slowing down, they're thinking more about kind of what are the things I need to do to ensure that we maintain momentum. That didn't surprise us. 36% was nice to see when organizations do that well. What surprised us was the 17% increase in annual revenue from that account. And where that came from, as we began to kind of unpack that a little bit, was the fact that because the sales representatives were engaging with more people inside the account, because they were strategically analyzing what do they need to do, the customer was either using the product more often, which drove the consumable or the disposable revenue, or they sold a larger deal up front, a larger piece of capital equipment, whatever it was, because they had more people using the product, because they cast a broader net. They didn't just go to that one person. So it really kind of made a difference when, in fact, we started analyzing what's accelerating the pipeline and what's increasing revenue.
That's interesting. Interesting. Okay, for CEOs and revenue leaders in the room today, what's the one priority that separates those that will win by the end of 2026 and those that won't?
I think for your sales leaders and your chief revenue officers, people that are on this podcast listening to this right now, I think the one thing that's going to separate the successful businesses from those average performers, people that just are kind of going to get by, I think are those leaders that can challenge the critical thinking of their sales teams to avoid opportunities from stalling. So do you know those questions to ask? It's not about what you go do as a sales leader. It's about what you ask. And the better questions that you can ask your sales managers, your sales reps, all of a sudden they start to look at the business through a different lens. because you're asking a different question. And maybe the question simply is, I want to know, why do we have 70% of our pipeline that has been stalled in stage 2 and stage 3 for more than 70 days? Why? Let's go find out. It's not to be critical, but it simply says, as a sales leader, I'm examining the business and I'm recognizing that we have a large percentage of our sales pipeline stalled in these 2 stages. Now we need to go find out. So that would probably be one thing that I would really begin to explore, because I do think it's true. In a difficult economy, bringing new business into the pipeline could be a little bit more difficult. But let's take the business and go with it.
So my question is, Steve, are the revenue leaders, are they up to asking the more strategic questions? Are they able and up to it? Because the thing is, where I'm coming from is technology has enabled us, but also disabled us as well, in that we look at the dashboard and we take what's given. And it takes a certain kind of mentality to look behind that, to ask the question that isn't on the dashboard. So that's one side from a leadership point of view. And then from the order takers, the trusted advisors, those people that are in the field, some of them have never been asked that question, or have never thought to ask the question of their customers. They've not been trained on that. Yeah. So how does this work in an environment where you might have some people that are lacking in those abilities and skills?
I loved how I thought you were going to go with this a little bit different than where you landed. But I think that the way I would respond to this is, AI is both a valuable asset and a terrible invention for salespeople and for managers, because it is taking away, in some regards, that critical thinking. However, you have to embrace what AI can provide you. And so I think that what we are seeing, and as Ignite Selling, we're providing this to our clients, are these AI coaches that can dissect an opportunity by asking the questions that challenge the critical thinking, the assumptions that a sales representative might be making. Take that tool that you talked about, where you're looking at who the key stakeholders are. By putting it into AI, either an image or simply telling the AI, these people have top 3 people who have high level influence, these people support us, these people don't, and asking AI, what should I be asking these customers today to take these people that don't support us to get them on the side that supports us? That's a critical thinking question. And let AI kind of begin saying, what questions should I be asking myself? And maybe AI is going to come back and simply just saying, well, what's been said or done to make you believe that this person that you say is a supporter of yours is truly a supporter? Sales reps say, well, they use our product. Smart AI will come back simply saying, a user of your product is not an advocate for you. They're simply a user of your product. An advocate is defined as somebody to whom would be willing to carry your company flag throughout that entire organization. Is this person that you say is a supporter of yours willing to die on that die on that hill for you and say, this is what we're going to do? If they're not your advocate. They're simply just a user. And we love those people because they use our product, but they're not willing to go ahead and carry the banner of our product throughout the whole company. So don't misunderstand it. But I think that's what AI can do. AI can challenge the critical thinking when it's used right.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so what personal value most influences the way that you lead, Steve?
I think that's a great question. It's a personal question for me. I think that the personal value that really kind of drives me are kind of 2 things. One is kind of living with a servant heart and living in the life of gratitude. I think that we can get ourselves really kind of caught up around, the me world that we live in today. What have you done for me lately kind of mentality that people sometimes would ask. And I think that we need to stop and say, what can I help? How can I help others? And that could be in a personal journey, things that you might do in your community, but I also think it extends into our professional world. One of the things you see on our website and our personal values is the profits and revenues of our company are merely an economic outcome of helping our clients succeed. So we want to know, what's it going to take in order to help you succeed in your business? And guess what? Not every deal is going to be the most profitable deal, but you know what we did? We can damn well be sure that our customers succeeded because they partnered with us. Because that's who we are. It's that servant heart that simply says, if we can't help you, we don't want to work with you. But if there's something that I think we can help with, let's talk about it. If you have stalled opportunities, I think we can help you. But before we commit to that, let's figure out, why are they stalling? If you have managers that are really kind of stuck and not really driving the type of outcome, you're facing turnover on a regular basis, I don't know if we can help you, but let's kind of figure out what's the cause of that. And let's figure out, what is it you're really trying to achieve? And let's see if we can help you. It's a long way of simply saying, Janice, it's about a servant heart. Yeah. And it's how I was raised. It's how I serve my community today, the volunteer organizations that I'm part of, and it's also how we support our clients here at Ignite Selling.
I love it. I love that servant heart, because you hear a lot about servant leadership, but actually servant heart is really appropriate. I absolutely love that, Steve.
Thank you.
How can listeners get hold of you, Steve, and get hold of the book as well?
Well, we'll make it real easy for them. Anybody that hits me up on LinkedIn, okay, just find me on LinkedIn, Steve Gielda, and then send me a message. Get LinkedIn with me, but send me a message and say, hey, I'd like to get a copy of your book. And we'll have somebody ship you out a copy of the book for you at no charge. So, just hit me up on LinkedIn. We'll get them a copy of the book.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast. Always love my conversation with you. You take care, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. It's always good being with you. Thanks again.
If you enjoy this episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, explore other episodes of insightful guest conversations or watch the caption show on YouTube. Remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode filled with strategies to help you scale your sales. I love to hear your thoughts, so please share your views and leave a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more revenue generators just like you. So until next time, keep scaling your sales.